Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today, a mixed media piece that will be using Inktense blocks, modeling paste, a napkin, and acrylic paints. This beautiful napkin is called Art Flower, and it's from NinnysNapkins.com. That and mixed media supplies can be found in the link in the description box. I'm rough cutting the elements from the napkin, and that allows me to play with the orientation and adjust it. Change how it looked in the napkin and make it my own. And I'm playing, am I going to go horizontal or vertical? Now I want to work on the background, and I'm going to use this lovely stencil called Nautical Vision. Now there's a border around the bottom three panels, so I'm taping off a border at the top, and I'm taping down the stencil so it doesn't move. I'm using light and fluffy modeling paste from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm using a key card to put it on. I find this, especially when you're doing a whole stencil like this, really helps make it work better. Now I chose this stencil because it has all this wonderful patterning in it. It's going to make my job creating the background much easier because the artist of the stencil has already done it. So this kind of stencil is invaluable. Now I have leftover modeling paste on the stencil, so I'm going to take that key card and rub it through the stencil onto a page in my accidental art journal. This isn't going to give an exact stencil modeling effect, but it is going to add texture to that page. Now, people have asked how I clean my stencils. With modeling paste, I use the key card. This is on a glass tabletop, and I take off the excess because you absolutely don't want the modeling paste to go down the drain. And once most of it's off, then I use my Murphy's oil soap and clean it off. The modeling paste takes a bit of time to dry, so I'm making sure that that's really dry before I go to the next step. Now I'm playing with the orientation now with that patterning behind it. That might change my ideas. And I'm peeling off the excess layers of my napkin elements. Now I'm using a water brush here to decal the edges. I don't want straight, harsh edges. I want them softer so they meld more easily into the background, and they're going to be less visible. You can see the one on the right is done and the other ones aren't, and you can see the difference. Now for the background, I wanted to put a base coat of color. So because there was that Naples yellow in the center of those flowers, I'm adding Naples yellow, a little bit of Naples yellow with white gesso and spreading it across the entire background. Some places are a little darker, and you can see how where there's color, it's brought out that texture. And we're going to do more to bring out that texture in a little bit. And once again, we have to give this time to dry. You can see how that yellow background really makes these flowers pop, and it ties in with the yellow that's in them. Now, before I finalize my orientation, I'm dug out my Simplify sentiment pack, and I'm playing with several options, and I have 2 or 3 that I think will work. So I'm committed to this orientation. So I'm putting some fluid matte medium underneath and then on top. Now, I know you've heard me say that napkins get fragile when you put the liquid on them. When you're gluing them down onto something that's texturized, that is even more true. So you want to be a little bit gentle and take your time, and so you don't end up ripping the napkin. If you do, you can just put some gesso on it, let that dry, and then colorize it during the colorization process. So it's not the end of the world if it rips. It doesn't mean you have to start over. It just means you've now given yourself some more work. Now you can see those flowers are kind of floating in the air because the stems on the napkin didn't need to be as long. I'll be painting them in. Now I've gone to my Inktense blocks, and they are ink that is water activated, much like watercolors, but they are permanent once they are dry. And I'm going to be over painting the flowers. And I'm adding a little bit of watered down gesso and then the color from the Inktense blocks that I've swatched out to match the colors of the napkin. Then I want to introduce some of that color into the background. So once I activate the color with water, I am putting it on, spraying water onto it so it moves a little bit. And I'm going to take all those colors in that napkin that I love and introduce them to the background. So there's the red or dark pink. There's some teal there, very slight. There's purple, the Naples yellow, and all those colors are going to find their way into this background. And I'm trying to get a watercolory effect. And you can see as soon as that Inktense block color pigment gets into the nooks and crannies of the modeling paste that we put through the stencil, it's bringing out that pattern. And I want that to happen to a small degree. I don't want too much pattern because I don't want it to compete with my focal image. Now with watercolors and Inktense block, you add some color, and once it dries maybe a little lighter, so then I'm coming back and adding it. This is a bit of an experimentation. I make it move, I look at it, I add some more, and I just keep tweaking it until I get it to a point that I really like it. I chose to use my Inktense blocks because it is going to give me that watercolory effect. If I had used the acrylic paints, I could have matched up the colors with the acrylic paints, but they're more opaque. I don't think I could have gotten that watercolory effect. So here I'm just going to continue over painting, just heightening the color on the flowers. Using those same four. There's a pink, reddish pink, the yellow, purple, teal. I want the focal image to stand out the most. If I had left the background very yellow, I may not have needed to tweak it. I like this background better because this looks like we've got the three flowers there that are sitting in a field of all these other flowers that are in the distance, and they're all kind of faded away. They're out of focus. I'm just adding the colors basically where the artist of the napkin had put the colors. I'm just heightening it. I love using napkins that have kind of watercolory, abstract flowers because they're very forgiving when you use them in your art journal. So here I'm using thinned black paint and my liner brush and painting the stems all the way down. This grounds it. And it was about this stage that I had decided that I really was liking this page. I just love the colors that were in that napkin, and that inspired me to choose them. Just adding more, making the dots, the black, a little darker. Now that I've overpainted it, it kind of faded, and I want to bring it up, and I really like the contrast. The black just added so much. Now I'm taking my purple of the Inktense block and colorizing that border. But I found that the purple by itself didn't seem to be dark enough. So then I come in with a little bit of watered down black And in essence, I've framed my picture this way. I don't know that I would do that again. I think I may have just left it the same color as the background, and it just would have been another textural element. Did you know that you could stamp with Inktense blocks? So you spray your stamp with a little bit of water and then rub your Inktense block over it, and then you stamp, and you get this watercolory effect. So you, in essence, I've got 72 colors of Inktense blocks. I could stamp with 72 colors, and it's permanent once dry. Now I'm stamping all over this background, including on top of some of the flower. That way it just kind of melds the background and the focal images together. And I'm not going to get a perfect stamp because remember, I'm stamping on the modeling paste, the texture that's in the background. I love how that just added one more element. I'm taking a little bit of Naples yellow acrylic paint, and I'm just rubbing it in some areas of the texture just to introduce a little more of that Naples yellow in the background to tie in with the center of the flowers and to bring out the texture. Then on that same makeup sponge, I put a little bit of black and lightly rub few areas to make that texture again come out even more. Right now I'm thinking I would love to do this on a canvas, on a cradled wood panel. I think this would make a lovely painting to hang on the wall. Now I'm using my angle brush and I am shading with black acrylic paint a little bit here and there just to define where that flower is and to bring out some of the petals of the flowers. I'm not doing every single petal, and I'm not even doing all the way around the flower, just doing it in a few areas. And then I'm doing the same with white and adding some highlights. I'm adding a little bit of white on that blending foam and just covering it up just to lighten the background just a smidge and again bring out that texture. I've chosen this very small sentiment and I'm going to cut it apart, and it's just going to say simply breathe, but you could leave off the sentiment on here. And I probably would if I was doing this on a canvas. Splattering with some thinned white paint first. Again, I wanted to make it look a little bit more frosty, a little lighter, and splattering with white will do that. And then I'm taking some of that Naples yellow, thinning it out, and going to splatter with that. Then I'll grab the heat tool and make sure I dry it so I don't smudge that. So I'm looking at this and I have the border, the black border, it seems to be just too rigid and I want to soften that. So I'm grabbing my angle brush and I'm shading around it, and it bleeds into the background and it softens that harsh edge. It also camouflages where it's not a perfectly straight line. And it's not. And you can see the texture that's there, how we brought it out with the darks, the lights, the stamping with the Inktense blocks. Very subtle, but it's there. Thank you so much for joining me. Give me a thumbs up. leave me a comment, ask a question. And as always, until next time, go get creative.